Welcome to Lmma News. Today in Congress, debates happened over the amendment of Missouri as a slave state into the Union, which would unbalance the power in Congress. Henry Clay came to the rescue in the midst of these arguments. The Missouri Compromise would allow Missouri into the Union as a slave state, and Maine would be brought into the country as a free state. Slavery would also be banned above the 3630 parallel, setting a precedent for accepting future states into the Union. The compromise would act as a bandage for the growing sectionalism problem of the North and South over slavery. Now to Mattea, who is in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Lauren. Tensions in Capitol Hill have been growing ever since Missouri requested state status. The third president, Thomas Jefferson, had something to say about this compromise in his notes on the state of Virginia. He feels that the federal government is having too much say in state politics by delaying Maine's admittance into the Union by a year. So slavery has almost brought the disunion of the country. With me, I have James Talmadge and Thomas Cobb. How do you view all of this, Talmadge?
Well, I think Missouri should have been admitted as a free state into the Union. I disagree with Jefferson. The federal government did not overstep their boundaries. The government could have done more to stop the growth of slavery because free states had more power in Congress to shut down this evil practice.
This is an abomination! I disagree with you, Mr. Talmadge! Missouri needs to be admitted to the Union as a slave state. This is the only way of living which slavery supports, and we need to be able to pass legislation in Congress to protect it. Jefferson is right. The federal government overstepped their boundaries. We should have been allowed into the Union without having to go through all the debates upsetting the balance between free states and slave states.
Thank you for joining us tonight on Lmma News. Tonight, the popular belief of manifest destiny has gripped the nation. It is the belief that it is the American people's God-given right to expand west, for America to extend from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean. The idea of manifest destiny starts a new period in American history as we leave the Jacksonian era. Americans are becoming more vocal about their beliefs. The expansion west would lead American settlers to run into the Mexican territory and create border disputes in Texas. Now to Mattea, who is currently at a railroad station that is taking American settlers west.
This railroad station is a symbol of how fast people are able to get to the west and how much transportation has improved. The manifest destiny that we see today is using the land that America got in the Louisiana Purchase. John O'Sullivan wrote the Democratic Review Manifest Destiny to express pride in America and was striving for westward expansion, which is just one of the many points on this topic. To get more input on this idea, I have Stephen Austin and William Lloyd Garrison with me. Tell me, Austin, how do you feel about manifest destiny?
Well, manifest destiny is a beautiful thing. I'm joining my father in Texas to build a new settlement. We need this western land for our cotton growing.
Cotton growing implements slavery, which is an absolute abomination. We do not need more slavery in this country.
Well, excuse me, Garrison, but currently this abomination is funding our economy because you northerners are doing nothing all day, and we southerners are pulling this nation along. We need more slave states to protect this institution from you northerners who don't seem to grasp this concept.
The Lmma proviso should have passed in Congress. The South is just a power-abusing region. Remember the Trail of Tears and those poor Indians? Their suffering was caused by your Southern precedent.
Are you kidding me? You northerners are just upset because the East can only expand into the Atlantic Ocean. Meanwhile, the South has lots of room to grow and expand slavery.
Gentlemen, settle down. Manifest destiny is creating a deep divide of sectionalism in our great nation.
A great Supreme Court case has brassed the Union tonight as you join us on Lmma News. The Dred Scott case has grabbed all of our attention as we watch it play out. Dred Scott, a slave, is suing for his freedom because his owner took him into a free state. Scott stated that after living in a free state for some time, he was no longer a slave. The Supreme Court ruled against Scott and by their ruling declared that you may have a slave in a free state because slaves are technically property. Now to Mattea, who is at the Capitol where all the excitement is going on.
The Dred Scott case impacts this nation as slaves cry out tonight, wanting to be freed from the bondage of slavery. William Lloyd Garrison created the document of Dred Scott and the Disunion to express his ideas of slavery abolished and for blacks having equal rights. He believes that the nation is turning corrupt because of the very fabric of this nation was formed by the basis of all men are created equal. as stated in the Declaration of Independence. Tonight, I have with me Roger Taney and the lawyer for Dred Scott. Taney, do you feel that you made the right decision today?
I do. Scott is not a citizen of this country, so his request of being freed should rightly be denied.
Be denied? Scott was in a free state. Any other African American in a free state is considered free. And why should Scott be any different? Scott deserves to be free. This man stood up for what he believed in, freedom.
Well, if you Northerners had your way, all slaves would be free. But the economy would collapse due to the decrease in production of cotton. Do you want the Panic of 1819 to happen again? I think not. In the Panic of 1837, the South was the only place not dramatically hurt because we had cotton.
Basic human rights are being denied to slaves. This is why the Underground Railroad was created, to give people freedom. Our country is based upon freedom, which means that we should not just stop at white Americans. Slavery needs to be contained.
Many events are going on across the United States tonight. Texas has been annexed into the Union, Manifest Destiny is in the minds of the American people, and James Polk is the president of our nation and he is calling for war. The Mexican War was brought on by these events. The United States entered a war against Mexico over fighting by the Rio Grande in Texas. Polk declared war saying that American blood will not be shed on American soil without retaliation. The land gained by the United States from the Mexican War created the California Gold Rush, increased international trade with other countries in Asia, and Americans' hunger for more world power. Now to Mattea, who is in Texas right now.
Fighting is raging on in Mexico and on the border of Texas. This war is creating a deeper divide in our nation. As the end of the war is growing closer in sight, and it looks like the United States will win this war and acquire more land, conflict is forming over whether the new land will be free or slave. On the Duty of Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau, Thoreau believes that the Mexican War is immoral and that he felt that he should not have to pay the tax for this very lengthy and expensive war. With me today, I have Zachary Taylor, who is taking a break from fighting, and Abraham Lincoln, a young congressman. How do you feel about this war, Abraham Lincoln?
Polk created this war. This war is unjust, and I agree with Thoreau. I gave my opinion of this event in my spot resolutions writing. This war should never have happened. It is too long and costly.
Well, maybe if you Northerners would support this war, then it wouldn't have taken so long.
The North is not supporting a war that will promote slavery. The South can't think the North is blind. More land means more slaves for farming. Cotton is destroying the land. That's the whole reason you need to move west, because you can't properly farm without hurting the land.
We are supporting this nation with cotton. You lazy Northerners can't do anything for yourselves. You can't even begin to deny this.
You're the one who has slaves! Do your own farming! Do your own farming!
Good evening. Henry Clay is once again in the news as he joins us tonight on Lmma News. The trouble started when California and New Mexico wanted to join the Union as free states. Clay came up with a compromise of 1850 that stated that California would be admitted as a free state into the Union, New Mexico admitted as a territory with no restrictions to slavery, New Mexico would have no votes in Congress, resolve the Texas-New Mexico border disputes by giving more land to New Mexico and by giving $10 million to Texas. This also abolished slavery in the District of Columbia and enhanced slaveholders' rights to reclaim runaway slaves. The compromise had to be created to settle the demands of the northern abolitionists and the slaveholding South, which continues to threaten with secession. Mattea is in the middle of all the action right now by being on Capitol Hill.
The Southerners have been opposed to this compromise and see secession as their only option, while Northerners are happy with California admitted as a free state, but had to give the South laws about slavery to keep them in the Union. The Northerners' position is enforced by the Constitution and the Union by Daniel Webster. With me, I have James Calhoun of New Mexico and John Calhoun of South Carolina. James, how do you feel about this compromise?
The abolition movement gained power in Congress through the acceptance of California, but why couldn't New Mexico be accepted? As the governor of New Mexico, we deserve to be entered into the Union.
Well, the only thing good that the South got out of this forced compromise is the Fugitive Slave Act. It's now the law for abolitionists to protect slavery. Hear that, James? It's a law. This is the only thing keeping us in the Union. that the abolitionists are forced to see our claim to slaves.
That is why we keep pushing for abolitionism, because one day, just watch out, John, we will destroy slavery.
A new book has hit the shelves of stores across the nation. Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe has become a bestseller as it touches the hot topic of slavery. Stowe, an active abolitionist, featured the main character of Uncle Tom, a long-suffering black slave whom the story revolves around. The sentimental novel depicts the reality of slavery while also asserting that Christian love can overcome something as destructive as enslavement of fellow human beings. This book has created a huge uproar in the South as it depicts slavery in an unjust light. While the South says that this isn't how slavery is, this book is changing people's cry for the containment of slavery to something new. Abolition movements are getting new members as a result of this book, and people want slavery to end. Some people say that the book will lay the groundwork for the Civil War. Now to Mattea, who is in front of a bookstore.
This book is strengthening the abolition movement across America as people believe that this is their duty to free blacks and God is on their side. The book itself, Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, has created quite a stir in this nation. With me, I have Harriet Beecher Stowe, the author herself, and John Calhoun. Harriet, how do you feel about your book turning people away from containment of slavery to the total abolition of slavery?
People should feel that slavery needs to be abolished. It is an immoral practice that needs to be gone with.
Woman, do you not see what this book is doing? You are making tons of Southerners unhappy with this book.
People agree with my book, mister. Probably the top-selling book of the decade. It wouldn't have made the best-selling list if people didn't already agree with abolition.
They are now calling for the destroyal of our livelihood.
Then I suggest you find a different way to live, Mr. Calhoun.
You are playing with fire, woman, I say.
The need for more internal improvements to connect all regions of the United States has created conflict as you join us tonight on Lmma News. Stephen Douglas wanted the railroad system to expand into some of the Louisiana Territory, mainly the Kansas and Nebraska territories. In order for Douglas to achieve his dream of expanding the Transcontinental Railroad, he would need Kansas and Nebraska admitted into the Union as states. Since both states are above the Missouri Compromise line of 3630 to allow the South to accept these states into the Union, Douglas passed the Kansas-Nebraska Act in Congress, which would allow popular sovereignty to decide the status of these states. This act would create bleeding Kansas and would mark the end of the Whig Party. This would create outrage in the North over the fact that slavery could spread and undid the workings of the Missouri Compromise. Now to Mattea, who is in Kansas right now.
Everyone expects Nebraska to be entered into the Union as a free state, so Kansas is the only real state in debate about slavery. I have witnessed violent fighting take place in the short amount of time that I have been in Kansas. The act to organize the territories of Nebraska and Kansas, an actual document that was created in Congress to create the idea that popular sovereignty should be used to identify the free or slave status of Nebraska and Kansas. With me, I have William Pitt Fessenden and a Southern voter. How do you feel about this, Fessenden?
This is an absolute outrage. Slavery should not be allowed into another state. Just outrageous! Slavery needs to end! Now!
Don't be such a downer. We all need to rejoice. Slavery has an opportunity to be spread beyond our boundaries. Be happy. The South's way of living will be protected.
Tonight, the nation has focused its attention on Illinois as the Lincoln-Douglas debates are going on. The Lincoln-Douglas debates are a series of 7 debates between Abraham Lincoln, the Republican candidate for the Senate in Illinois, and Senator Stephen Douglas, the Democratic Party candidate. The main issue discussed in all 7 debates is slavery. These debates would help Lincoln when he campaigned for presidency and would set a future precedent for political debates. Now to Mattea, who is in Freeport, Illinois, where the highly watched debates are going on as they attack the views of slavery in this sectionally divided country.
These debates created quite a stir throughout the country as they touched the hot topic of slavery. The letter from Abraham Lincoln was about one of the speeches heard during the debates about his views on slavery. These debates have created a greater debate between the South and North due to the political aspect of slavery. With me, I have Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas. Lincoln, how do you demonstrate your views on slavery?
I think slavery should be contained and slowly disappear to show the true nature of our country, which is based on the freedom of all people. Many Northerners agree with my position on how to get rid of slavery, but some abolitionists, like William Lloyd Garrison, push for a more radical move.
Lincoln, you have forgotten that the nation is also built on the belief of letting the people have a say in their federal government. Popular sovereignty should decide if slavery should be contained or not. Let the people decide.
Welcome back to Lmma News. Our great nation is continuing to grow uneasy and tense over the conflicting ideas on slavery. Information has came in tonight about the attack on Harper's Ferry in Virginia by John Brown and his followers. Brown and his men were trying to start a slave revolt, but failed miserably by getting caught by officials. They have now been sentenced of treason punishable by death. Now to Mattea, who is in front of the courthouse in Harper's Ferry.
Tensions are escalating quickly as people begin to form different ideas on the morality of Brown's actions. Governor Henry Wise has formulated the letters regarding John Brown and states that Brown has committed murder, robbery, and treason and deserves his punishment. With me, I have Robert E. Lee and Lydia Marie Child. What do you think of this, Lee?
As the federal officer who is in charge of capturing Brown is guilty of treason to this great nation as a villain.
You had no right to arrest Brown. He is a hero in the eyes of the North. Brown sacrificed his life to bring down the abomination of slavery. We need more abolitionists like him.
Well, the whole reason why the southern part of our nation is rising up an army is because we are now fearing slave revolts and for our life. You abolitionists are threatening us with death and what you call a hero.
Tonight on Lmma News, Abraham Lincoln has just won the presidential election and will be the 16th president of this fair country. Lincoln has been elected president during a time where the sectional divide in our country cannot be deeper between the North and the South. The North rejoices because the abolition movement will be supported by our new president. But it is a great night tonight. Southern states are planning on seceding from the nation. South Carolina was the first to secede, and more states are entering the lengthening list. Now to Mattea, who is currently in South Carolina.
This whole country is in an uproar as the sectional divide has reached its breaking point. Abraham Lincoln has foreseen this event with his United States cannot be divided House speech. He realized that this nation couldn't be half slave and half free to survive. With me tonight, I have Frederick Douglass and William Yancey. Douglas, how do you feel about all of this?
This Republican victory of Abraham Lincoln winning the presidency is also an anti-slavery victory. Lincoln supports the North's views on slavery, while Southern states should have never seceded from our nation. It is outrageous, I tell you.
Southern state secession is not outrageous. This is the only way we can support our way of living. It's time for the South to become its own country. Might I repeat, its own country with no sectional ties to that of the North. Your president will only attack our way of living and create nothing but problems for us Southerners.
This secession of states will lead to the declaration of the Civil War, a long and bloody war fought on American soil.